Do you really think he forgot you? That he moved on, that his life simply went on without you as if nothing ever happened? It's easy to believe that silence means indifference, that distance equals forgetting, that calmness signals closure. But the emotional world of men is far more complex, more hidden, and far quieter than it appears on the surface. What many women read as detachment is often a mask, a carefully built shield behind which something unresolved still breathes. Not every wound bleeds in public. Not every goodbye is truly over. There are men who appear composed but unravel quietly when no one's looking. They scroll through old photos, revisit conversations they swore they deleted, or hear your name and feel that familiar ache in their chest. They tell the world they've moved on, but every attempt at new connection feels hollow. They say they're fine because they don't know how to say they're not. Male pain, unlike the expressive storms of women, often goes underground. It buries itself beneath routine laughter or indifference. It becomes a secret language, coded gestures, subtle actions, contradictions that to an outside eye might seem irrational. But those actions speak volumes if you know how to listen. When a man suffers silently, he doesn't confess it in words. He communicates it through what he can't control: his energy, his eyes, his hesitations. That's why silence shouldn't always be mistaken for peace. Sometimes silence is survival. Sometimes it's the only way a man knows how to keep himself from breaking. And if you've ever wondered whether he still feels something for you, look not at what he says, but what he tries to hide. You may hear from friends that he mentioned your name in conversation. Not often, not directly, but enough for it to linger. Perhaps someone told you he brought you up at a gathering, that he recalled a memory, or dropped a vague comment that only you would understand. When a man has truly closed a chapter, he doesn't bring you up again. He lets the silence swallow it. But when something inside him still resists closure, you become a shadow that follows him into every room. He talks about you, but never to you. He analyzes what went wrong, tries to justify it, sometimes blames you, sometimes blames himself. But what he's really doing is trying to make sense of what still hurts. It's not closure he's seeking, it's comprehension, because he can't yet understand how something that once felt alive could now be gone. So he turns you into a story, a reference, a riddle he keeps retelling, hoping that repetition will somehow dull the ache. And if you see him in person, you might notice the avoidance, the sudden stiffness, the way his gaze slips away the second you look up. He won't approach, won't say hello, won't break the barrier. Yet you'll feel his eyes on you when you turn away. That tension, that invisible pull, isn't indifference, it's fear. Because facing you means facing the part of himself he's been trying to bury. Men often think that keeping distance will protect them, that if they don't reach out, if they don't look back, the emotion will fade. But distance doesn't dissolve attachment, it often intensifies it. The more he avoids you, the more he's forced to feel the void your absence leaves behind. So he watches from afar, curious but afraid, wanting to know how you're doing, yet terrified to find out you've truly moved on. If you ever notice him pretending not to care while quietly observing to understand that he's not playing games, he's protecting what little control he feels he has left. Every avoidance, every silence, every flicker of attention disguised as indifference is his way of managing an emotion he hasn't mastered. And the worst thing you could do is react impulsively, chase him, confront him, or mock his silence. True emotional maturity doesn't react, it perceives. When you remain calm, grounded, and centered, you communicate something his chaos cannot piece. You become the mirror that reflects both what he's lost and what he still longs for. The more you resist the urge to prove something, the more you allow his own emotions to surface. Because the truth is, what unsettles a man the most isn't rejection. It's seeing you at peace while he's still conflicted. And maybe that's the hardest lesson in all of this, that healing is not always loud. That sometimes the people who seem furthest from you are still fighting the deepest battles to forget you. They post, they smile, they appear reborn, but beneath it all, there's an echo, your voice, your scent, the memory of how it felt to be known. They might never say it, but silence doesn't erase feeling. It only hides it, waiting for time or courage to bring it to the surface again. You might see him online projecting an image of someone thriving. The smiling photos, the gym selfies, the motivational quotes about self-love and new beginnings. At first glance, it looks like he's finally over you, building a new chapter, radiating confidence. But if you look closer, there's a different story behind the filters. The energy feels forced, the smiles rehearse the captions a little too eager to convince not only you but himself. Because when a man is truly healed, he doesn't need to prove it. Peace doesn't announce itself. Only pain tries to advertise its strength. Every story he posts, every new photo, every sudden burst of social activity, those are not signs of freedom. They are symptoms of confusion. It's not that he doesn't feel anything anymore. It's that he's fighting to feel something different, to replace pain with noise, to drown out what still echoes inside him by showing the world how great he's doing. But deep down, he hopes you're watching. He hopes you see him smiling and wonder if he's really fine. He wants you to believe he's unbothered, but secretly he's waiting for your reaction. It's a strange paradox. The louder the performance, the deeper the wound. Every man who has ever lost someone he truly cared for knows this. He might not cry publicly, but he'll curate an image of triumph in armor made of pictures and posts, not because he's vain, but because he's scared. Scared that if he stops performing, he'll have to sit in silence with the truth that he still misses you. And when he can't maintain the facade, when his inner world starts to fracture, you'll notice it in contradictions. He'll block you one day and unblock you the next. He'll ignore you for weeks, and then suddenly, like an old post, or send a meaningless message just enough to test the waters. He might even post something that feels like an indirect jab or a quote that mirrors the argument you once had. Then, before you can respond, he disappears again. To you, it may look childish, manipulative, confusing, but beneath the inconsistency lies a simple truth: he's emotionally disoriented. His heart and his pride are at war, and you're the battlefield. Part of him wants to reach out to reconnect, to tell you what he couldn't say before. The other part whispers that he shouldn't, that you've moved on, that showing vulnerability would make him weak. So he oscillates between desire and defense, between wanting to close the distance and needing to protect what's left of his dignity. You might be tempted to respond, to match his contradictions with your own, to block him back, to post something that mirrors his mood, to remind him that two can play the same game. But that's not power, that's reaction. Real strength lies in understanding the emotion behind the chaos without letting it pull you in. When you stay composed, when you don't chase or retaliate, you become the calm he secretly longs for. Because every time he blocks you, he's trying to erase the ache, and every time he unblocks you, he's admitting that he can't. Each sudden reappearance is a quiet confession: I still feel you, even if I wish I didn't. The back and forth, the contradictions, the random appearances, they are not strategies. They are symptoms of longing colliding with pride. And if you've ever wondered why he can't simply say what he feels, the answer lies in conditioning. From a young age, men are taught that emotion equals weakness. They learn to build strength through suppression. So when they lose someone they love, the grief has nowhere to go. It becomes disguised as anger, silence, or indifference. The boy who is never allowed to cry becomes the man who can't say he's hurting. So instead, he expresses it through actions that confuse you because they're not meant for logic, they're born from pain. That's why your calmness matters. When you don't feed the confusion, when you refuse to join the emotional tug of war, you give his storm no wind. You stop being the chaos and become the quiet mirror that reflects truth. He might not say it, but he feels it. Your steadiness disarms him. Your peace challenges him. It reminds him of everything he lost, not through punishment, but through contrast. Because true emotional power is silent. It doesn't chase, doesn't compete, doesn't seek validation. It simply exists unshaken. And in time, he'll sense it. He'll notice that your stillness isn't coldness, it's closure. And that realization will stay with him far longer than any argument or post ever could. There comes a point when his contradictions evolve into quiet performances. He may no longer message you, but his social media becomes a theater where every post is a monologue you were meant to hear. A song lyric that mirrors your story. A caption about letting go or new beginnings. A photo that subtly echoes moments you once shared. To the world, it looks like ordinary content, but to you, it feels coded. You read between the lines and you sense what's really happening. He's still talking to you, just in disguise. When a man still carries unresolved emotion but doesn't have the courage to speak it, he finds indirect ways to communicate. Social media becomes his language, a place where vulnerability hides behind irony and longing, dresses itself as freedom. He'll never admit it's for you, but both of you know it is. Because if he truly didn't care, he wouldn't need you to see it. He wouldn't care whether you noticed or not. The The simple act of crafting a message that might reach your eyes reveals that you still matter. He might have even blocked you before, then quietly unblocked you later. No explanation, no words. To you, it's confusing. To him, it's survival. Blocking is control, a desperate attempt to reclaim power over his emotions. Unblocking is surrender, a silent confession that the connection still tugs at him. That push and pull isn't about playing games, it's about trying to breathe through emotional chaos. When he blocks you, he's saying, I need to stop feeling. When he unblocks you, he's saying, I can't. And maybe he doesn't reach out directly. Maybe he just wants to be visible again, to appear in your story views, to see if you'll react, to remind you that he's still there. His reappearance may seem small, but it's loaded with meaning. It's his way of saying, I haven't forgotten, I just don't know how to start again. These subtle gestures, these patterns of vanishing and returning, reveal the truth. He's not indifferent. He's emotionally disoriented. If you're grounded enough, you'll begin to see this not as manipulation, but as pain translated into behavior. Because someone who is truly over you doesn't need to orbit your world, but someone who still feels connected will find 100 small ways to stay near without crossing the line. A story view, a subtle like, a song lyric that hits too close to home. He's not reaching out to rebuild the relationship, he's reaching out to relieve the ache. He wants to know that the bond even faintly still exists. And here's the most powerful truth. The more he tries to prove he's fine without you, the more he exposes how deeply you still live inside him. The louder the image of happiness, the stronger the silence behind it. He might go out, meet new people, even date again, but the energy never feels right. You can't replace depth with distraction. You can't fill emotional absence with noise. So he keeps trying, hoping that something or someone will finally drown out what's left of you. Yet what he doesn't understand is that genuine healing isn't about forgetting. It's about facing. And because he can't face what he feels, the wound keeps echoing. Every song that reminds him of you, every place you once went, every familiar scent, it all becomes a quiet reminder that the past still breathes somewhere beneath the surface. You, on the other hand, have a choice. You can watch his actions and feel tempted to respond, or you can step back and interpret what's really happening. He's still processing. And that process doesn't need your participation. The most transformative thing you can do for both of you is to stop feeding the cycle. Let silence meet silence. Because in that stillness, clarity starts to form. When you don't respond, when you stop reacting to his subtle invitations, he's forced to sit with himself. No distraction, no validation, just the mirror of his own choices. And that's when the real growth begins. It's in those quiet, lonely moments that a man finally starts to understand what he lost, not because you reminded him, but because you didn't. There's a kind of dignity in restraint. It's not about pride, it's about peace. It's the recognition that love cannot be rebuilt through mixed signals or emotional ping-pong. It requires stillness, reflection, and the courage to face the truth. Sometimes love remains, but the relationship must end. And maybe he knows that too. Maybe that's why he stays quiet. Because deep down, he senses that even if the feeling never fully dies, it can't live the same way again. There's another kind of silence that speaks even louder, the one where he stops reaching out entirely, yet no one seems able to take your place. He might look free, even content. You might hear that he's dating, that he's seeing new people, that life has moved forward. But what you don't see is the invisible comparison running through his mind. Every conversation, every smile, every new encounter is unconsciously measured against what he once felt with you. And no matter how much he tries to open his heart again, it resists. It's not that he doesn't want to move on, it's that he can't. He meets someone new and the connection feels empty. He goes on dates that end in polite small talk. He gets messages that don't excite him, laughter that doesn't sound right. He wants to feel something again, but everything he touches seems to echo what's missing. You. What you brought into his world wasn't just affection, it was emotional resonance. And that's something not easily replaced. You might think he's forgotten, but deep inside, he's still haunted by the quiet spaces where you used to exist. The songs you once played together still hit differently. The restaurants, the scents, the little routines, they all carry traces of you. And he doesn't tell anyone this. not his friends, not his new dates, because even he doesn't fully understand why the memory still lives on. So he suppresses it, pretending it's gone. Yet the heart has its own memory, one that logic can't erase. This kind of suffering is invisible. It doesn't show in tears or public confessions. It shows in hesitation, in emptiness, in the inability to fully connect with anyone else. Because once a man has felt a genuine emotional bond, he can't easily substitute it with something superficial. He might try. He might tell himself he's ready. But the truth is, every new beginning feels like a pale imitation. And though he may not realize it, the reason nothing feels the same is because he's still carrying you somewhere inside. You on your end might have reached peace. You might have learned to let go, to rebuild, to live without needing closure. And that's good. Because when you finally detach from the emotional noise, you stop waiting for external validation. You understand that his silence isn't proof of your worth, nor is it your responsibility to fix. His pain is his to decode, and your peace is yours to protect. Many women think that if a man doesn't chase, he doesn't care. But emotional restraint doesn't always mean indifference. Sometimes it's pride, sometimes fear. Sometimes it's the simple inability to express what hurts. He might still think of you in the quietest moments, driving home late, walking through a familiar street, or hearing a song that suddenly stirs something old. But instead of texting you, he keeps it inside, because reaching out would make the wound real again, and pretending it's healed feels safer. So he keeps living. He laughs, he works, he goes out with friends. But when he's alone, that's when your absence returns like a tide. That's when silence becomes the loudest reminder of what he lost. And though he may not show it, that silence shapes him. It teaches him what pride once refused to admit, that love once genuine doesn't vanish, it changes form. It becomes memory, reflection, and sometimes regret. And maybe years from now, he'll finally understand what he couldn't see before. That love wasn't about control or ego, but presence. That real strength isn't found in shutting down emotions, but in facing them. That moving on isn't about forgetting, but forgiving both you and himself. What he doesn't realize is that by suffering in silence, he's learning something essential about himself. Pain has a way of teaching what comfort never can. It strips away illusions and reveals truth. The truth that he wasn't indifferent, he was afraid. That he didn't forget, he tried to survive. And that even if time erases your names from each other's phones, it can't erase the way two souls once recognized each other. So if you ever doubt that he still feels something, remember this: not every emotion is meant to be spoken. Some are meant to be lived quietly between the beats of an ordinary life. Sometimes love's echo doesn't fade, it just settles into silence. And in that silence, something beautiful happens. You both grow, you both learn, you both become softer, wiser, and more capable of real connection in the future. Because love, even when lost, leaves behind a trace of light. A lesson about presence, empathy, and the courage it takes to feel deeply in a world that rewards detachment. If this reflection resonated with you, take a moment to breathe, to feel, and to honor whatever lingers in your own heart. If this story helped you see things differently, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more videos about the quiet truths of human emotion. And tell me in the comments, have you ever loved someone who stayed silent yet never really let go?